Let's move right along to 2A. So we've got Rock Ridge back at the state tournament for the second year in a row, and they're led by a good-looking junior, Landon Bull.
Yeah, and they have a new head coach, Jordan Harris, who is he's got roots in the AAU Quad City area. I think he knows his team fairly well. I think it's pretty good hire. Their previous coach went to UT in the Western Big Six. They've been to state back-to-back years. They finished fourth, and unfortunately, as you watch those games, even looking at the results on paper, they really weren't competitive in any of those games last year or this past season. But I think this year could be a year that and maybe they change that and not that it's like a bad thing. I mean, hell, there's however many hundreds of teams would take a fourth place finish. They have a lot of young players that have varsity experience. They play Illini Bluffs at A-Town on December 16th. So you got preseason number one 1A, preseason number one 2A, and they could play again at the Macomb Holiday Tournament. They picked up a game against Bloomington Central Catholic right before Christmas, which was a lot more exciting before Cole sort of moved out of Bloomington, but we'll get to that.
Right. We got number two, Manuel the Rams. They've got quite the talent in Dietrich Richardson, 6'5" junior.
Yeah, they're back into 2A for the first time in about 12 or 13 years. Last time they were 2A, they played in the 2A state title game. That was when Myers Leonard and that Robinson team knocked them off in the title game. A lot of juniors on this team. They could certainly win state this year. I mean, it wouldn't be a stretch, but I think next year, if all these kids are here next year, you'll be looking at them as like the prohibitive favorite to win 2A next year. And because of the 2-year enrollment cycle that we're in now, they're locked into 2A next year, regardless of what happens this year.
And they've got quite a strength of schedule too. They've got the Pontiac Holiday tournament.
They're by far them and P&D are the smallest schools in that tournament in that league.
Columbia, number three. They've got quite the window here coming in. Sam Donald, a 6'6" junior, and Brody Landgraf, a 6'5" sophomore.
Yeah, they have a lot of players coming back. I do think that they graduated the best player from last year. So there's that void to fill, but they have enough size and experience that on paper they should be able to do that relatively easily. They're in that Columbia Freeburg Holiday Tournament, which has kind of just slowly gone downhill over the years. I wish that they would combine that tournament with the modern day holiday tournament and kick all the out-of-state teams out. I'd drive down there for that. They're going to be right there with Breeze Central in that Cahokia large division. They play T-Town, I think, at the Greenville shootout. And then they're at Riverton, so I'm excited to see who they get matched up with at Riverton. I think Rock Ridge may be at Riverton also, and they played last year at A-Town, and that was a hell of a game. They're going to be 27-4, 28-3, something like that. I mean, they're, in my opinion, deserving of this number 3 spot.
At number four, we've got Northridge Prep, and I know you're really high on this squad. Javi Christoffel, TJ Gorman, Ben Hathry, and then Yosef Hazab. They play a tight defense, don't they?
They do. Yeah, I am high on them, and maybe it's just showing a little bit of respect to the coaching staff and the style of basketball that they play. I just think I have a feeling that this is their year. This is the year that they can win a sectional. They have their own Thanksgiving tournament. They're all large. They're bigger schools in that tournament. They're schools that they should be able to beat. What they've been able to do in a non-conference to try to get some challenges in there. The independent school conference that they're in is not great. There's going to be some tight, hotly contested battles in there, but they should win that conference. They're scheduled to play Westinghouse. They're also at the Fulton shootout. So I'm expecting a really nice record, and I'm expecting a team that is going to be ready for postseason.
It'll be interesting to kind of see how or where the regional sectional sightings are, because I know that school brings a good crowd, and that creates a real home court advantage. I'm pretty sure when who was it, Marquise Jacobs and Uplift were in that regional, they almost got upset by Northridge Prep in the regional championship there.
Yeah, I mean, historically, Northridge is been at the heels of some really good teams. I know Providence St. Mel was lucky to get out of the gym with a win one night in the postseason. It's just they're a team they're easy to overlook because you know, within the Chicago area, nobody's ever talking about them. I'm always paying attention to them.
El Paso Gridley's number 5, and they've got the big man Jonah Funk, a 6'9" junior.
Yep, and there's 3 other starters coming back with him. I may be a little high on this team, but when you get in your own head, you can project. You can almost convince yourself of anything. They were 18-14 last year. I think they're going to be in the 25 plus win category. They're in the Washington Tournament of Champions. Well, they're in the shootout series, so they're going to play Indian Trail, Wisconsin. They have their own Thanksgiving tournament. They got a nice road game early at Pontiac. Then they host Prairie Central. Those will be 2 results to track early on to see if I'm just completely out of my mind with this ranking, or if they're going to be worthy of it.
Micah Meese, Chancey Maxon, Cam Schumacher. Those are the other 3 starters they bring back. I ended up watching them last year at Prairie Central. I really enjoyed watching them a lot. It'll be fun to see what they have with another year under their belt playing together. Christ the King out of Chicago comes in next, and they're led by 6'7" CJ Warsham, a senior.
Yep, and new blood to the upper echelon of 2A. Darian Green is a guard coming back. They're in that Chicagoland Christian Conference, which they needed to get out of that Chicago Prep Conference. Them and Hope Academy both. It wasn't doing anything for them. It wasn't preparing them for anything. They're in the IC Westmont Holiday Tournament. They're in the Sterling Martin Luther King. It's not really a tournament. I mean, you just kind of play 2 games anymore. You used to get 4 games in that tournament.
Right.
Rock Island, I think, was just announced as the last team in that event. So that may be worth something to keep an eye on that Monday. Because it's like Christ the King, Kankakee, Rock Falls, Rock Island, Sterling, and Normal West. I think that's the lineup. And you're going to get 2 games. So that'll be good for them to get out of the city and play some teams that they're not used to playing. And Christ the King's been in that event for off and on for a few years. They go to the Dog Pound in Waukegan mid-January with the flux and talent and the flux and schools being 2A or 3A. This is an opportunity for them to really win that sectional. I think they can do it. We'll just have to see.
Byron, we've got them checking in at number 7, and they are very senior heavy.
They're going to be a tough group. They're going to win a lot of games. They're trying to get their non-conference strength of schedule up a little bit. They're in the Freeport and Martin Luther King tournament, or again, that's like a 1-day play 2 game thing. They should win the Big Northern. Trying to think of the last time they won the Big Northern. It was probably been 2012 with Hunter Hill, and they're still playing football. I know one kid at least on the team plays football, but they're not playing any games the first week of the season anyway, because they were expecting to be playing for state in football anyway. Depending on where they go postseason, traditionally they're in that same sectional as it would be like a Rock Ridge and Manual and all those teams. If they have to go that way, it's going to be tough sledding. If they get pushed into the North Ridge side of things, things are going to open up a little bit for them. But 2 guards that I like to watch play a whole lot are Ryan Tucker and Jack Hively. Jack Hively came over a couple of years ago from Akron. He was one of the first kids to start bailing on Akron before basically everybody in the school left, and that's why they're forced to co-op with Orangeville now. They don't have like good size for 2A, but they have kids that are strong and big enough that I don't expect them to get bullied around a whole lot. They had a great summer, if you consider having a good summer of any value. 26-5, 27-4, somewhere in there. Very doable, in my opinion.
Right. Fury Notre Dame is number 8. They've got another big man, 6'9" senior, Eon Dillon.
That's Owen. That's how you say that.
Owen?
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. It took me
every day. Yeah.
It took me many years of mispronouncing that one myself. So I was corrected at saying, hey, it's Owen. All right.
All righty.
Anyway, 6'9", Elliot Lynch, 6'9", tons of size, a program that traditionally plays really good defense in the half court, and they can get full court with that zone press like Manual dropping down to 2A. The win-loss record won't be pretty, but there's going to be a lot of belly aching come March from the rural schools about having to play a Catholic school from Peoria. Uh, they they lost Cooper Cook to Metamora. If he was still with this team, you could just go ahead and pencil them in as number one, and you'd probably be sitting pretty. Uh, Either way, I think they can still achieve everything that they thought they could achieve in 2A. It may just look a little different.
Right, and they're always going to play that tough non-conference schedule, and then in conference, obviously they're gonna be battle tested along with Manu, who also is in 2A. Phillips is next. Speaking of tough non-conference and conference, they're they've they've got Amari Edwards, a junior, and I'll let you go over their schedule, but it's their record's going to be something else by the end of the season.
Yeah, so of the 100 teams that we will have talked about at the end of this podcast, they're one of like three teams that hasn't returned any starters. And if you can take a stab in the dark at what the common theme is for those three teams, it would be transfers. So they graduated five seniors. They got six or seven, what I'm going to call verified transfers, or the transfers that I know about that are on my list. And they may have some more. They have size on paper. I don't know if the size is any good. Marlon Green, Keith Collins, Phoenix Childs, Derek Brooks, and then Amari Edwards is going to be the straw that stirs the drink for them. He came over from St. Rita. He's a junior. They're gonna get whacked in some games in that Red South Central. They're gonna be athletic enough on that South side to win that sectional, especially with prospective leadership getting bumped up to 3A. And then, Leo was a traditional power in that sectional, and they've fallen on some really hard times, unfortunately, for that program. So this is a team that can absolutely win a sectional this year.
Rounding out the top 10, we've got Fieldcrest. What do we got on the Knights, Aaron?
Well, they went through a coaching change, and I'm going to shoot myself for blanking on this coach's name. Uh, he was like the only coach they ever had. But anyway, he retired. He goes off into the sunset. New coach. It's basically the same system, same team. Nathan Cook, Ed Lorton, Connor Rackman. They are up in your face defensively, and they move the ball with a purpose. They attack the rim with a purpose. Traditionally, have been, especially last year, they started out really slow. They buried themselves with losses earlier in the year, and it took them till about a week after Christmas to really get out of that funk. They won about 13 games in a row, and then conference foe El Paso Gridley knocked them off in the regional after they had previously beaten them twice in the regular season. So it'll be them and EPG again at the top of that HOIC. They're in the State Farm Classic, which is year in, year out the best small school holiday tournament in the entire state.
Next, we've got the Wooden Shoes at number 11 of Teutopolis. Garrett Gaddis and 6'5". Joey Niebergy.
Yeah, the Niebruggies, the however many clans there are there in T-Town, they just keep pouring them out. I think one of the jokes I made on our unrecorded podcast, I'll try to make again, is if I don't know anything about 2A, I can put them here at this spot and be in a pretty safe spot. They're going to beat, they'll probably beat Mount Vernon at Mount Vernon, and then they'll lose. They'll probably lose at home to Tuscola. So they're kind of and they've been that way for a few years. I always hear, even from local T-Town people, "Oh, you got us too high. We're not that good." I'm like, yeah, well, you're going to win the section. How bad can you possibly be? They're at the Pinckneyville shootout, and then they have their own shootout that last regular season Saturday, which is the 10th now. It used to be the 17th, the last, because they play the regional quarterfinals on Saturdays now. Anyway, moving on. 12.
Yep.
Prairie Central.
Then we got Tyler Curl coming back, and boy, was he was a fun player last year.
I had them at number one going into the postseason last year, and I was disappointed for them, alongside with them that they didn't win that sectional. Pontiac beat them, but this group is sort of a positionless basketball team where they're all athletic, they're all about 6'2", 6'3", they all move well. And they're basketball players. A lot of times you get big schools that have some big kids that aren't really basketball players, just kind of out there because they're big. All these kids can play. I may be high on them, but I like this program.
Pinckneyville, number 13. They got a new coach, Matt Lauer.
They do. coming over from Freeburg.
They have uh,
Yeah.
they have returning Carson Conkle, 6'6", AJ Keith, Jace Lee, Hunter Lee, and Ty Lowers coming on over. He's a 6'5" sophomore.
Yeah, Carson Conkle is just a workhorse on the low block. He rebounds his own miss as well. He's just a tough matchup for anybody in 2A. AJ Keith is a really nice athlete. He's a high flyer. We know Ty Lowers over with them now. I don't know what his role is at the varsity level for this year. I'm interested in finding out. They're in the Carlisle tournament, second week of the season. They should win that. They are in their own. Well, they host the Dustin Thomas Holiday Classic, and then they get Jabot at home before Christmas, which they went to Jabot before Christmas last year, and Jabot beat them. Pinckneyville just had a weird year last year. They got hot early, they lost some games late, and then they got on a roll again and almost got to state. And T-Town knocked them off in the super sectional. But that's what we know about the Panthers.
Looking forward to the Duster Thomas Holiday Classic. I'm going to try to make an appearance over there one more time this year. Bree Central is next, and they have a trio of 6'4" seniors: Zane Schrag, Mason Schubert, Colton Arnold.
Breeze Central, as you mentioned, those trio of 6'4s, and they went through a slight dip in what you're used to seeing out of Breeze Central a few years ago, but they were back the year before. They had a really nice COVID year that didn't matter at all, unfortunately. And then last year, if that sectional title game is played anywhere other than Pinckneyville, I truly believe that they win that game. But it was at Duster Thomas, and when you get 3,000 people in that gym and 2,500 of them are wearing the Columbia blue, it can be a really tough place to even hear yourself think as an opposing team. But this team has a really solid strength of schedule. They're in the St. Anthony Thanksgiving tournament. They're going to play, I think they're going to play Newton at the Mount Vernon shootout, which would be good for Newton. And we're going to talk about Newton here in a little bit. That'll be a nice result to keep an eye on. They're in the Highland shootout, but they're going to play Highland. They were tentatively scheduled to play PND at O'Fallon in February, but I don't know if they're going to pull PND out because Cooper Cook's not there anymore or not. So I don't know what the validity of that game is anymore. And then they're at Riverton. So we know they're not going to play Columbia at Riverton, but Rock Ridge is there. So there could be a potential for another really nice late season challenge for the Cougs.
Next, we've got Lawrenceville. What can you tell us about the Indians, Aaron?
Well, about 10 years, it wasn't 10 years ago, 2014 or 15. 15 might have been the last really good team they had. 15, 16, somewhere in there. They went through some lean years. Last year they had a nice team. Most of those kids are back, and I expect them to be really good this year. Parker Hardiman, Landon Sanders, Bryant Jenkins. The big issue that I have with their schedule is that it's, the holiday tournament isn't great. Some of the non-conference schedule are not great. From a fan, I would like to see them have more challenges in the off season. They're in the Lawrence County Capital Classic to start the year, so that's Fairfield, Mount Carmel, an Indiana school, and then whoever they'd get in the crossover game, which could be T-Town, because the T-Town got back in it this year. Other than that, I would have preferred that they were in the Effingham T-Town Holiday Tournament, but they're not. They can win the LIC, and I'm going to say that they can win the sectional. They can. I don't know if they will.
Checking in next, we've got Massac County. They bring back a couple of real productive seniors, Isaac Hossman and Will Harmon.
Yep, Isaac Hossman, coach's kid there for Joe Hossman, one of the last. I think he's the last son that Joe has. He's had sons. He's got a boy older than me. There was a kid around my age. This is the last one, I think. I was told that he may be stepping down once his kid graduates. If that's the case, he's like a first ballot Hall of Fame type coach. If it wasn't for the Seton Academy transfer team of 2008, 2009, Massac would have won state in 2A that year. That team was one of the best teams to ever come out of Southern Illinois from a small school. They start the year at the Vienna Classic. They're going to Meridian Bobcats. They're going to get Vienna. We're going to touch on Vienna here in a few. They're in the El Dorado Holiday Tournament. The bugaboo for them, at least from where I'm sitting over the last few years, is and they get into that sectional and they just get worn out by a Breeze or a Pinckneyville teams that are just are playing a tougher schedule and are probably physically a little tougher also. Massac will get hot. They'll win a lot of games in a row. Then they'll have some injuries or they'll just fall in some hard times. But they're going to be pencil them in for a regional. And hopefully it comes down between them and Vienna because it's not what you'd call a rivalry, but Vienna would like to beat them.
Number 17, the Irish of Seneca. They've got some size. They've got Paxton Gertz, Lane Provencal, 6'7" senior, and Kyson Kilkner, 6'5" senior.
Yeah, Gertz the point guard. He makes him go. He started as a freshman, if I recall correctly. A junior now, so he's gonna be way up in there for the career points by the time he's out of there. They go down to the Effingham Teton Holiday Tournament just for this year, which is good for them. They need a little bit of strength of schedule buffer. They're going to be in the Bloomington Central Catholic Martin Luther King event on the 13th and the 15th of January. Going to get 2 games there. That used to be a round robin event and for 4 teams, and now they're trying to make it more of a more of a shootout than it is an actual tournament. It's like Aurora Christian, Normal U High, PND, Princeton, Quincy Notre Dame, Rockford Lutheran, Seneca, and then the host. So that's like I wish that were like an 8-team bracket because that would be really fun to see who could come out on top.
All right.
But anyway, where they're going to end up in the postseason. Let's see what subsectional they're going to be in. They're over there in the eastern side. It could be like El Paso, Gridley, Fieldcrest. So I wouldn't say that they're favored, but they should be playing for a regional title. And they're going to have a chance to knock somebody off.
Murfreesboro is next at 18, and
Yeah.
they've got a little bit of a young team, but they're very fun to watch, fast, athletic.
Yeah. And coming out of, at the end of the year, you always just throw in like top 10, top 15 for each class of how you're feeling at the moment. And then you kind of wiggle your way through the summer with transfers and things that you're hearing. And I don't know, I was really comfortable with them in the top 10 spot early on. And then I talked myself out of it and they ended up where they are. But they got in the DuQuoin Tip-Off Classic. They hosted their own Thanksgiving tournament for a long time, but then it just kind of got weird. They were co-hosting with Trico for the last few years, and then they had a bunch of St. Louis schools that would be in there, and I think they just said, let's just dump this thing. The DuQuoin tournament's a nice tournament. It's like Heron, Carmi, Sparta, Cesar, Caro, Chester, DuQuoin, and Murphy. So that's a pool play, and then they're going to Florida according to their schedule. Second week of December for a tournament. I don't know anything about that tournament. I'll log the results and we'll just have to move on. I don't know if they get beat, if the teams are any good or not.
Sure.
They're at the Pinckneyville Holiday Tournament again, going to Sparta for the midwinter tournament. They're still on the Ohio side. So Carterville came over from the Mississippi side of the river to river and joined the Ohio. It used to be a west-east alignment, and now it's kind of north and south, but they're more focused on jockeying enrollments. I wish they would just eliminate the divisions in the river to river. There's 11 teams in the conference, so just put everybody in one and play everybody once, and you still get 10 conference games. I'd be more interested in that. But Murphy, Red Devils, good coach, been there a long time. Coach Murphy at Murphy. It was meant to be. But I don't know if they can win that sectional, but they always surprise you like one way or another. You expect big things with them sometimes, and they had some really questionable losses last year, and then they had some really nice wins. So I'm looking for more consistency from this team.
Cade Brooks, Caden Shields, Carmelo Abernathy, those are their top returners. Moving on next, we've got Bloomington Central Catholic. Colton Hayes, Trenton Eller, Will Vogel, Charlie Graham.
Yeah, Trey Eller, he's a nice player. Pretty sure his dad was the coach at Hayworth years ago when they went to state. Uh, wouldn't it be fun if this Eller kid was on the Hayworth team this year? That'd be nice.
Right.
But so yeah, that they lose Cole Serta. Jason Welch can coach. He can make adjustments. He can coach as good as anybody in the state. I'm not real concerned about them losing Cole Serta. I mean, you would have preferred not to lose him. Their strength of schedule is as good as it gets in 2A. They're in the State Farm Classic. They're in Bloomington. We've talked about their Martin Luther King tournament. Um, there's that Sangamo IPC Conference Challenge that was a really. I went to that last year. That was a lot of fun. Uh, I may just have to make that an annual thing. Their win loss record won't be overly impressive, which it wasn't last year, and they played for the state title game. They're on that geographical pendulum of where they go for postseason. Sometimes they go east, sometimes they go west. If they can go west, with Sangamo being a little down this year, they could win another sectional. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Number 20, we've got the Bobcats at Beecher. Aiden McGinley. Kid can fill it up, man. Love watching him play.
Yeah, and this group has been coming and they've been progressing organically through the years, and the schedule's shifted in the same vein. Uh, they're in the Taylorville shootout. They got in the Moline uh, Martin Luther King shootout thing, or I'm not sure what they call it, East Bay or whatever they're calling it. They have had their own shootout in the years past at the end of January. As far as I know, they still plan on having that. They're not going to get a whole lot of challenges in the River Valley Conference. They're in that Erie Workins Classic for Christmas. They got St. Joe Ogden before Christmas. That would be a game to pencil. If they can put it on SJO, maybe this team is the real deal. I may be a little high on them, but that's where they're at number 20.
Jack Hayhurst is a 6'4 junior. They also bring back Benton. The Rangers are number 21, and they've got a big man, Docker Tadashi, 6'7 junior.
They had some guards coming back with him. They are one of the teams that shifted divisions in that river to river conference. So they'll get two conference games with Pinckneyville. They'll probably play Pinckneyville in Pinckneyville's tournament, and then they'll probably play Pinckneyville in their own tournament. So they'll play Pinckneyville 4 times. They'll probably play them in the postseason. Well, they probably won't. So that'll be a super sectional game, I think, or a sectional. Either way, strength of schedule is not the problem. We talked about yesterday. The river to rivers, you can equate it to Big Ten conference play, and these teams they just beat each other up, and they're all ready, but they're all ready for postseason. But it's kind of like crabs in a bucket where you're just pulling each other down all year, and whoever's physically left, you know. Uh, but they're another team like Murfreesboro that I liked them coming out of last year, and then for whatever reason, I talked myself down to the 21 spot, and it could end up being way low.
Luke Melvin and Isaac Billington are a couple other of those key returners. Vienna, number 22. They can score it, can't they? Owen Treat, 6'2 senior, leads the way for them.
Yeah, they were one of the highest scoring teams in the state last year. It was like 74 or 75 a game, I think. They're if they were a 1A team, you know, I'd be driving the bus for them because they're that talented. But they're 2A, and their strength of schedule isn't great for 2A. They're in the wrong side of the black diamond for that. And at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to can they beat Massac. They're going to get Massac at their own tournament to start the year. They're most likely going to have to beat Massac to win a regional. Uh, and the fact that those schools are located so close, uh, that that would be a game. That'd be a game to see because there's going to be a lot of. I don't want to use the word hatred, but it's going to be a hotly contested game.
Newton is number 23, senior heavy group with Parker Wolf, Caden Nichols, Dylan Gear.
Yeah, everybody coming back. I like Parker Wolf. He is he's like an all-state type producer on the basketball floor. I do like what they have going in the strength of schedule standpoint. They're in the Effingham T-Town Holiday Tournament. They're going to play Breeze at the Mount Vernon Shootout. They come down to Marion just after Christmas and play the Wildcats. They have the conference games with Casey, Olney. Yeah, Olney's another team that's just in the wrong class. If they were 2A, I'd really like them. Newton, because their schedule's tougher than Lawrenceville's, so Lawrenceville's probably going to have a better record. But those you could go either way. You can make an argument for either one of those teams to win the LIC.
Macomb checks in at number 24. They've got a pair of six seniors, Dion Doyle, Ian Case, and then they've also got JT Jeter.
Yeah, Dion Doyle was a kid that I think missed half of last year. I don't know if it was injury or what. If they have him for a full year and they have a full roster, uh, they're going to win a lot of games. They're in that Prairie Land Conference, which they're in the division of the Prairie Land that they're in. They're by far the largest school in that division. The non-conference schedule's pretty good. They got QND, Farmington, Kewanee. They're in the A-Town Shootout. They play Argenta, a 1A school who they have everybody back. And so that could be a nice game. Have you seen the lineup for that A-Town Shootout?
I have, yeah. It looks
It's really good. Macomb, obviously in the Macomb Holiday Tournament, they're in the Moline Martin Luther King Shootout. Some late games against IVC, Rock Falls, Camp Point, and Payson. Again, that sectional's more wide open than maybe it has been in recent years, so they could certainly win a regional.
rounding out the two-way field. We've got Clinton Maroons, Dawson Graves, Keaton Graves, Mason Walker, and Colton Walker.
Yeah, not a school you're used to seeing on a basketball list, but had a nice year last year. It wasn't great, but they had a nice year. Like they were like 23-8 or so, like somewhere in that ballpark. A good reason to like them, aside from the kids they had coming back, is their coach Vic Binkley, who's IBCA Hall of Famer and deservedly so. He was kind of pushed out of Warrensburg Latham a few years ago, and obviously still had the fire to coach. Still has the means and the wherewithal to be a really good coach. Clinton picked him up. They're in that Central Illinois Conference with Tuscola and Meridian, the Macon Meridian, and then Shelbyville. So the conference is getting smaller because they kicked St. T and St. Sullivan left on their own accord. But it's a really nice conference. Their strength of schedule isn't great, but there should be enough challenges in there where we have a pretty good idea of what they are by the time postseason comes around.
Perfect. That'll wrap up the two-way field.